Hello and welcome. I am your host of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Author Karen E. Osborne. I have five novels out. The latest is Justice for Emerson. I am so glad that you're here. This is a space for readers and writers to come together and talk about books. So today you get to meet Doug Wheeler. Hey, Doug.
Hi, Karen.
So glad you're here.
Oh,
Doug is an acclaimed psychotherapist, and he is also unique. He's written a unique book, The Reimagining of the Biblical Story of Jonah. And so we want to find out like why and how and
hmm.
everything that we can about it. So let's start with kind of your story. Who are you? A brief,
Oh,
who are you?
that's interesting because I was sitting in a small group in the church that I attend on Sunday morning, and that was one of the questions. Who are you and where are you going? And boy, I
Mhm.
tell you what, it took me a moment to find words because I wasn't prepared beforehand. So I think I'm better prepared today. So I've been a psychotherapist for 36 years. So when I say acclaimed, not that I'm nationwide or well known, but I'm well known in certain areas. But I put in my 10,000 hours, as Malcolm Gladwell would say, I put in my 10,000 hours times five. So
Mhm.
I did a little bit of math around that, probably 50,000 hours of sitting with people in person. And of course, since COVID, during COVID, a lot of virtual work. All my work now is virtual. I recently moved my practice to a coaching model because I was getting inquiries across the country, and I was only, as a clinical therapist, I was only licensed in Washington. So that was a bit limiting for me. So I've shifted to a coaching model, which felt like a bit of a regression because there's a lot of different takes on the coaching industry. But I provide therapeutic guidance for men. The last 10 years of my
Mhm.
psychotherapy practice has been specifically working with men. People have challenged me on that to say, well, why is that? You seem to help a lot of people in the past. And I've said that I just felt maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I felt as if one moment my heart exploded with and my mind exploded with. Men are so misunderstood and many times misunderstood and mishandled in the therapy office. And I found myself, I had done some of that myself.
Mhm.
So things shifted for me. I grew up in Elizabethtown, Kentucky. When we moved there in 1964 from the Chicago area, it was a town of probably 6,000 people. Now it's up to 35,000 people.
Mhm.
I graduated from Western Kentucky University in 1983 with a degree in agriculture. I know that you currently live in Florida. Yes. I didn't grow up in a farming family. There's a
That's
story
quite a
there.
switch, right?
Oh, a big
Agriculture.
switch. A big switch. So I taught high school for 2 years in Central Florida. You and I chatted earlier. You know where Arcadia is. That's a long time ago in my life in DeSoto County. Things began to kind of shift for me in regards to focus. And at the urging of my late father, he suggested that I get a counseling degree. So I went to seminary in 1986, completed a degree there, married in 1989. We moved, excuse me, we moved to Denver. I opened my first counseling practice. I was there for 5 years. We then moved to Woodinville, Washington, which is on the east side of Seattle. And that's where I raised my two sons. That was the most of my therapy work was done in an office in downtown Woodinville.
Mhm.
So I became a community therapist, if you will. And
So
then,
can
oh,
I
go ahead.
ask you then? So as you were doing your therapy and your community work, what made you want to switch to writing? Like where did the writing bug come from?
Yeah, the writing bug came. The writing bug came. We had relocated out of Woodinville to Renton, Washington. And I was at a very, I'm 66 years old, and I had a rather mystical spiritual experience at the age of
Mm,
18 that literally saved my life. I had suicidal ideations. I had a
mm,
lot of things from trauma that were occurring in my life. So that old biblical phrase, one gets saved, I did. I did. And it started a journey of faith for me. And I ended up in the Christian community and I went to church and all of that for years and was married in the church. And my wife comes from that background. Um, so I raised my sons in that context. I didn't grow up in the church per se. Um, so my spiritual life has been very, very important to me. And in 2014, 15, things began to crumble for me. Just personally, I began to question a lot about the things that I had come to believe. This conversion experience moved me into a Christian community that quickly discipled me. And I was very impressionable, as we are often at that young age. So I globbed onto things that later in my life I began to shift out of. And then in 2016, a dear friend of mine asked me to speak at his church. And I've done that in the past, and I like that preaching type of work. Um, but I didn't have a scriptural text. I didn't have a topic, and actually had no interest in going to church and had fallen away from all of it. So I didn't tell Scott, my friend, but I really had a lot of anxiety about what in the world am I going to speak about? So I opened my Bible after a long time of not reading the Bible and had made a decision I probably would never read the book again the way I'd read it. So personally, so close to my spiritual development. And the book of Jonah just popped out to me. And it was really
mm.
strange because the only reason I grabbed a hold of it truly was it was short. It was short, and I thought I could get something out of this. It's four short chapters in its original form.
Mm.
I read the book. I thought, well, I can tell a story about somebody in a whale because I think it's more mythical than real, but I don't really care if it's literal or whatever. It's mythical in my mind. And that character of Jonah got a hold of me. I've come to see since then, Karen, uh, that it accessed the Jonah in me. So it
Mm.
really created a new format for me around my own trauma and the trauma I'd worked with for people for so long. So the key thing I saw is this character in this book is misunderstood and mistreated. And then I had to tackle the big topic of who's he mistreated by? Well, the way I read it, he's mistreated by the character of God in the story. So I'd fallen away from my faith far enough that I felt like I could take that topic on. Um, and so I went after it, and my imagination just literally just went ablaze. But the key thing for me was I felt this solidarity. Um, I felt like a public defender that needed to defend Jonah in a court of law because he
Mm.
was being mistreated. So I reimagined a different story, and people have said to me since, well, you really messed around with the original story. And my thought is, well, I did pick a mythical story, and so it was messed around with in somebody's mind, so I just messed around with it in a different way. And I brought to bear on the story my own trauma. People have read the book and know a little bit about my story or a lot and say, wow, you're in the book, aren't you? It's rather cloaked, though. It's not a testimonial or a documentary about my life. It really is, as Emily Dickinson, the great poet, the 19th century poet, said, if you're going to tell the truth, tell it in a slant way. And I tell what I believe is the truth of this mythical story, this mythical character who's mistreated. I tell it from a slant style. It's more of a novella than it is even just a short story or a novel. It's written in
Mhm.
the second person, so each chapter addresses Jonah. And the original title for the book was Emails to Jonah.
Mm.
Because I write really good emails, Karen. Why? Because they're short.
I
They're
don't
short and
I
I
don't
can get
doubt
right to
that.
it.
I don't doubt that. So so as you were writing this reimagining Jonah's life, uh, you were what do you want your readers to come away with? What is the core message that you're trying to
Yeah.
convey?
I appreciate that, Karen. I think of a big circle and a small circle inside of it. The small circle is people. I wasn't sure what the message of the book was because there's just like multi messages in the book. But the
Mm,
reviews I've gotten back, and what people have said is it's become a book about spiritual formation, about their own work on retelling and reframing their own story. So it's a mirror into here's this character that's presented this way. I mean, he's so mistreated in the story. So I move away from all the theology of what God was trying to do and whatever. And I just look at person before prophet, person before credential. I learned that from my father. You can find out what a person does, but who is the person many times behind what they do? And men often ask, well, what do you do? That's the way we trade our
hmm
stories and our knowledge of each other. So the core message from a very intimate place is the formation of your own trauma to recast it and hopefully continue to heal from it and tell a new story about who you are. Because Jonah, the subtitle of the book is A Flight to Freedom.
hmm
So many would read the book and say, "My goodness, I mean, so much that you got from the story is not in the original story." And I say to myself, "Yeah, that's the work of imagination, isn't it? It's recasting." The big picture message, and it's quite a bold one, and I think it's very relevant to our times. It's a book that really tackles from a slant angle this whole movement of Christian nationalism. It really tackles that in a very non-literal way. I recently had a young reader who said to me, Doug, I couldn't put the book down. My husband and I, it's created conversations for us, and it's so relevant to our times. And I thought, Sienna, and I said to her, I sent a message to her and said, Sienna, you're the only one who's spoken about the relevancy, the political and religious relevancy of this book at this time. It's why I'm still passionate about getting the message out, because I really do believe it has a voice into the conversation, a disruptive voice about how religious power is used. And so there's an anger in the book. There's a
mm,
protest in the book. And I use it from a place of a traumatized, oppressed person who wants to protest, but is not free to do so. So I guess I'm the public defender who gives voice to the criminal.
mm.
Yeah. So that's
That-
kind of what's going on in the short little book. I'm not an author by trade, but I guess I'm an author because I wrote a book.
You're an author now. You're an author
I'm
now.
an author now.
You have, it's such an intriguing cover, besides it being an intriguing book. It's
Mm,
such a beautiful, beautiful, intriguing cover, which is just over your shoulder.
it is.
Could you briefly tell our audience about
I
the story
could. I
behind that?
could.
We don't
And
have
you're
a
the
lot of time, but
That's right. You're the first person that I don't know that ever said to me, "What?" And I think you're the first person that ever used the word beautiful. That was painted by a childhood friend of mine that I hadn't spoken to in probably 45 years. Beth and I connected on Facebook. I saw some of her work, and we connected on this small town I grew up in Kentucky, and we shared stories. And I said, Beth, your artwork is incredible. She said, my house is covered with my own work. I've never sold it. I've never done a consignment piece. Doug, I don't think I'm the right person. And I said, if there's one thing I can do, I can spot talent. You are my artist. So that's an oil painting that she probably spent 70 hours plus
mm,
on my son and I, who's a filmmaker by trade in the LA area. And he helped me, especially with the artwork. She does 9 black and white sketches, one per chapter. There's 9 chapters in the book. That's the front cover. I'll end it with this story. I was interviewing a promotional person to promote the book, and we were 5 minutes into the conversation, and he said, "Can you send me the front cover of the book?" I said, "Oh, I'd love to." I sent him the front cover. Never met this person. He says to me
mhm.
on the phone, "Oh goodness, I don't like that at all." And I said, "Really? Why?" I felt so bold to ask why, because I wanted to kind of fight with this person, to be honest with you. And he said, "Oh, it looks so sad." And
Mm,
I thought, you know what? this character of Jonah we intuited as a sad character who comes to some freedom. And he said, would you be willing to change it? And I said, after three Mississippi ones, Mississippi two, Mississippi three, I said, absolutely not. We talked for 5 more minutes. And of course, suffice to say, he never got the job.
Yes, yes. No, it's a very moving cover. It's really quite evocative. Uh, so one other thing I wanted to ask you about is that you infuse music
Yes.
throughout the book. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
I grew up, I was born in 59, so I grew up in the 60s and 70s. Which I think personally, this is an old guy talking. I don't want to say the best era, but what an era for music. So I
Mm,
have such a diverse palette for music. Motown and disco, I loved it all. I could see the beauty in all of it. Some I liked more than others. So when it came time to write the book, I was always listening to music. And then I realized there were certain songs, and by the way, there's an honorable mention of about 50 other songs that never made it to the nine.
mm,
But I sought each songwriter out personally, or a family member if the songwriter was deceased. I went out and bought the rights to be able to, and there's a little lyric, as you've seen, there's a little lyric that introduces each chapter. But I sought each
mhm.
person out. So Karen, if you had written the song, um, oh, whatever, for one of the songs, I would have asked you or asked a family member, would you be okay if I use this? Because I didn't want to misuse somebody's work. I
Right.
got a response from everybody. You and I could talk for an hour about the response that I got from Pete Townsend from The Who.
Mm,
I got a personal letter from Pete's assistant that I have framed, and he said, you have my blessing to use Behind Blue Eyes, whatever lyric piece you want, but make sure that you purchase it first so you don't get into legal problems. So I purchased the rights to each one. So
mm,
I encourage my readers in the introduction to listen to each song while they're reading that chapter, because for me, music is what has helped me always access my feelings. I grew
yeah.
up as a neurodivergent ADHD kid and struggled significantly in school. At that time, I would have definitely gotten more assistance now. I never completed a whole book, never finished a book from cover to cover the day I graduated from high school. Never read a whole book. But I read liner notes of my albums. I pored over them and I would listen on the radio and my friends would listen to the tune. I would listen to each word. So I learned to read by listening to music.
Yeah. Wow. That's a whole nother story, isn't it?
That's a whole nother
That's
story.
a whole nother story. So, one of the things we like to do is recommend books as part of the show.
Okay.
Is there a book that you have read recently that you might recommend or whenever that you might want
Can
to
I give you
recommend?
can I give you a four?
No, we're out of time.
We're out of time. I'll give you one. I made notes because I thought you might ask this. Um, a friend of mine who actually endorsed the back of the book, Susan B. Miller, a
Hmm.
good friend of mine, is a therapist up somewhere in upstate Michigan. Her novel, A Beautiful Land, by
Mm,
Susan B. Miller.
mm,
I'm not a novel reader per se, but that one I couldn't put down.
mm.
Susan B. Miller. You can find it on Amazon or wherever you get your books, thrift books or whatever. A Beautiful Land. That's what I would
Beautiful.
recommend.
Thank you. Thank you. So, how can people find out more about you? How can they be in touch with you? I know that you can, all of you know this, that you can find his books any place that you buy and borrow books. You know, just your local store, your local independent store, your library. If they don't have it, just ask for it and then
Yes.
they will get it for you. But what if they want to be in touch with you? How do they do that?
Well, you asked me prior regarding what am I working on these days. I'm working on recasting a marketing strategy for the book, and I did an audio book, and we're trying to. So, the first time we put it out and I didn't really know what I was doing, but you learn by doing and you learn by mistakes. So I now know what to do. So I got the right people on board. So that's what I'm working on. In regards to how to find me, you can find me on Facebook and you can find me on Instagram and all those things, but I suck at all of that. So the best thing to do is to find me on my coaching website, reach out to me personally.
Mm,
I don't have an administrator. I don't have anybody representing me. So that would be at dougasguide.com. So that's DOUGASGUIDE, dougasguide.com. And they can reach out to me and there's a phone number and they can call me or they can send me an email. And before we end, I just want to give a shout out to Peter Okonkwo because Peter is our mutual friend and he's the one
yeah.
that connected you and I.
Yes, and thank you, Peter. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Peter. Thank you, Peter, to
And
introducing
thank
me to
all
Karen.
of you for watching and listening. I know that you found this conversation intriguing. Please do go look for Doug's book and read it and listen to the music while you're reading
Yes.
it, which will enhance the experience greatly. And then let him know what you thought.
Yes.
Write a review.
Yes, we'd love that.
And please tell him that you met him on What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Until
Mhm.
next week, everybody. Bye bye.